we can just jump right into this, and because I think we've got some really good stuff to talk about. It's the big night, right? It is the Thursday night for the arrest and the dinner and everything. Um, Dr. Terrell, welcome back. We have been so grateful for all that you have brought to these discussions, and there's a whole there's a whole Reverend Dr. Joanne Terrell fan club at Gather that's like huge, like close to having banners that we wave and stuff. So I just want you to know that we're very, very excited, very grateful for all that you've brought to these discussions, and we especially look forward to having you with us next week in person. Everybody's all jazzed about that. So we're very excited. And of course, this week we're looking at the Thursday night, which we will memorialize on Maundy Thursday, obviously going into Holy Week. And so now things are maybe feeling a little more concrete for us as we go into Holy Week, because these are the parts of the week that we really sort of rehearse every year, right? And so there is this focus on Maundy Thursday on the Passover meal and the arrest, the denial, Judas's activity. In Mark's gospel, there's that interesting little bit, which we'll work with on the Bible study, about the disciple who winds up running around naked. I don't really understand that. So that's always, our buddy Ted Jennings used to always get a kick out of that. He's like, I don't know why he's naked in the woods, but he is. So anyway, there's some stuff going on there. What I want to talk about with you, because I think this is really going to tie to your own work and stuff, is I don't think that we ever quite make the connection between this meal that Jesus has and what's going on in Jesus's story, with its tie to the Passover and the Exodus. That Exodus often sort of gets taken off the table, right? It is just like, oh, well, it was Passover. And this many Christians almost treat it almost like it was almost coincidental. Jesus happened to be there for the Passover, and this happened to be the time that he got arrested. But I think the Gospels are really, particularly for their readers, wanted them to understand there's a huge connection between the Exodus and Passover and what's happening at this meal. Do you have any thoughts about that at all, or am I just a little crazy?
No, I don't think you're crazy at all. I think that the gospel writers are very intentionally connecting Jesus's narrative with the narratives that ground Jewish and Israelite history, and they're intentional about this meal in particular, signifying the um, the replacement in the Christian trajectory of religiosity, of uh, replacement of the Jewish sacrificial system with the idea that Jesus's death is a sacrificial death.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And that in both instances, it is God who provides the system of sacrifice.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Is very different from the cultural context of both, in which the sacrificial system is provided in order, in the larger context, is provided in order to appease God.
Mm-hmm.
So it's an objective sacrifice that's being implied in these other cultures, that God becomes the object of our worship and not the subject who is implementing a system whereby we might be made whole again. And so in the Israelite system, it is God's provision that of the sacrificial system that makes it possible for the cult or for the group to find ways to reconnect with each other. Mm-hmm. And to reconnect with God, to atone, to at one with each other, mm-hmm. to become at one with each other. And in the Christian understanding, which is actually a kind of revamping of the system around the story of Jesus, they're very conscientiously saying God provides this sacrifice. There's agency involved here. There's it's not just something that is passively happening to Jesus.
Mhm.
It's his agency, it's God's agency, it's their agency together that that reinterprets his death as a sacrament, as a sign of God's presence, as a sign of God's doing, that will enable people to become again at one with God through the life and death, resurrection, and continuous intercession of Jesus Christ. So,
Mhm. Mhm.
so they're very, I think they're very conscientious about making these connections, and they go further when the whoever whichever apostle it is writes the book of Hebrews to connect it to the system of sacrifice.
Right. That's where
Mhm.
we get this language of Jesus as the lamb, right? And we hear that the lamb language begins to come up, right? Which is a direct tie back to Passover with the
Mhm.
idea of the spreading of the lamb's blood as the form of protection and from death, and also the sign that you're reconciled to God, that God is sort of on your side. Is sort of the way that blood kind of does that differentiation. I think that, I mean, that's one way maybe to interpret it, that
He,
God is, yeah,
he's not only the paschal lamb, the blood sacrifice, the sacrifice, and who provides the basis of the common meal. He's
yes,
not
yes,
only that, he's also the lamb who takes away the sins of the world, the lamb who is
yes,
on whom the sins of the people are laid and then is symbolically led to the wilderness to take away the sins of the world. That lamb is not slain, but that lamb is
right,
takes away the so he's both.
right,
He fulfills a number of roles in the sacrificial system as devised in Christian thought.
hmm
So he's also the high priest who can be touched with the feelings of our infirmities.
right,
So he's he's the sum total of
yeah.
of the parts. Uh, the meaningful sacrifice in Christian ideation.
I also think about the fact that there are those moments throughout Jesus's ministry where people say that, well, there's well, first of all, there is the transfiguration, where he is now in the company of Moses, who is, the Exodus, right? And
Mhm.
Elijah, for whom there is the sacrificial act where Yahweh is established as the God of Israel, right? Right, the big they've got sacrificial associations as well.
Mhm.
I think it's really interesting that the writers would look at Passover, which is probably the highest holy rite, maybe. Well, I don't know. I don't want to start that. But anyway, it's a big rite. It's a big deal. Okay. To pick
Yom
that up.
Kippur is the high holy day.
Yeah, right. Yeah, I mean, it's a big enough that everybody got to stop work and come into Jerusalem, right? This is a lot that's going on for this, and they
Mhm.
choose this as a way to kind of, and Jesus's language, particularly if you look at like the Gospel of John, where there's the long discourse, right, is all about love and greater. This is where we get greater love has no man in this, and by this will all people know that you're my disciples, and all this stuff comes out by your love. It's love, love, love. So I'm just wondering, kind of, if we think about communion as sort of a reenactment of what Jesus did, which in many ways was a reenactment of the original Passover. So we are sort of reenacting a reenactment, right?
Mhm.
Um, what do you think we lose, or what do we have we gained in the way that Christians have sort of embraced this? I don't want to say appropriated, although there might be some appropriation going on there, but the way that we've embraced it, I don't know.
Oh, but don't forget they were Jews too.
That's true.
They weren't
Yeah,
Christians. They were
yeah,
Jews and only begrudgingly took the name Christian.
that's true. That's true. Hmm.
And later in a different context as well in Antioch in
Yeah.
Syria.
Hmm.
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 So I think what we lose is is the reason why we do it.
Hmm. Hmm.
What we lose is the reason why why we remember him in this way, and the reason why um, the reason why is not just a personal gift of salvation,
Hmm.
We lose the communal sense of the gift of Jesus.
Hmm.
That is, it's never been about Jesus as my personal Lord and Savior. Even though we use that language, it's so antithetical to what Hebrew identity is, his own Hebrew identity was. That we are a community striving to be whole by being reconnected to each other. And we're also a community that's striving to grow because the message of love doesn't belong to a particular province. It doesn't belong to a particular ethnicity. It doesn't belong to a particular religion even. The message of love can be carried everywhere. And so we lose a sense that is is just for me, that he died for me. We lose the sense of the pro nobis, the
Hmm.
for usness of this death,
Yeah.
for a broader sense of who us can be, who we can be. I think that's what we lose, especially if we don't know the linkages between this story and the story of the Israelites who uh, are adumbrated in the community of Jews.
Hmm.
So I mean, Christianity is so thoroughly imbricated with individualism since its move away from its origin points. And it's sad that that's so. It's sad that that's so.
Hmm.
I think because and it's not just about my church. It's about the cosmos that of which Jesus is the Lord, of the looming cosmos.
Hmm.
That's what it is. And we lose a sense that you know that um I'm part of something even bigger than my church. And I'm part of something, certainly part of something that's even bigger than myself, but bigger than my church, bigger than my community, bigger than my denomination, bigger than you know
My
all
nation. Yeah.
that,
Yeah.
that my neighbor is everyone.
Hmm.
uh and that they don't have to be like in order to be my neighbor.
Right.
They don't have to to change from Islam to Christianity to be my neighbor. They don't have to change from Buddhism to Christianity to be my neighbor.
Hmm.
They don't have to change from agnostic to being my neighbor. But that everyone who is part of this great, uh, I want to call it creation,
Hmm.
but that's also assuming that there's a God who created it. And while I privilege that uh, definition of why this is all here, others may not. Others may attribute it to whatever they attribute it to, and yet and still we have to find ways to be in relationship to all of it.
That's right.
Yet and still.
That's right. That's
Mm.
right. And this, it's what's really funny is that we even call it communion, don't we? From where the
With
same,
you.
yes, yes, the same idea that we get, where we get even the word communism comes out of that same idea that it's all equal for everybody, for all people, and community. All of those words are all rooted in the same concept. And yet, communion often in a lot of places becomes a very divisive issue, right? It is this idea of there are some churches that I go to, and because I'm not a member and haven't done X, Y, and Z, I'm not even welcome at the table. Even if that was the tradition I was raised in, if I haven't done X, Y, and Z, forget it, not today. And there's something sort of I think sort of counterintuitive to all of that. But then I also go back to the idea of I really want to set um, the liberation theologist in you free for a few minutes, because I think there's also in this connection, this Passover connection of the fact that God is standing with the enslaved people of Israel in the Passover, that there is a sort of in the recitation of that narrative on the night of the Passover. And the assumption is, this is what I think we all forget, is the assumption is Jesus has them for the Passover. They've done the Passover right and everything. There's no need to script that. It's assumed everybody knows what they've done, right? You know, sort of like we went to Sunday school. Okay, we don't have to tell you what the lesson was and what everybody said, right? So it's that kind of idea. But I think in my mind, I think the writers are trying to make connection with this idea of liberation and the idea that Jesus is not, as part of this sacrificial system, is also achieving what was set in motion the night of the Passover in the Exodus, right? This is the beginning of a liberative move where God is releasing. I'm trying to set you up, but I don't want to put words in your mouth. I mean, what are your thoughts about those kind of connections and the way that gets interpreted into our own, as liberation, you know, theologians and believers? How does that work?
Well, the Passover commemorates the Exodus, and which is another time in the history of Israelite people in which God uh, acts as agent of the blood.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
You know, acts as agent who has the authority over and the jurisdiction over blood, and who lives and who perishes because of what God does.
Yeah.
So and so, yes, it's about liberation in the profoundest sense, about God's move in history. It's about God's intervention, eruption in the historical moment. And so I definitely agree with that. I definitely see that that is the whole purpose of Jesus's mission, to come and set captive people free, and to people, and to give good news to the poor, and to to give everyone the power to become children of God again. So yes, I totally agree that this is about liberation in the finest sense. It's about enlightenment. It's
Yes.
in its own way as well. It's about being called out as the people of God. Uh, this is what this move is about. Uh, it's the establishment of the church, not as the institution, but the establishment of the called out people, the people who are moving towards a wider cosmological perspective as they go to a wider freedom. The word salvation in Hebrew actually means to set in a large place.
Mm-hmm.
That
Mm-hmm.
means
Yeah.
emotionally set in a large place. That
Mm-hmm.
means physically set in a large place, to a new land. And even though that's problematic about the way that empire is used to justify
Mm-hmm.
uh, uh, what the Israelites did to the Canaanites,
Yes.
that that's a whole different story. It is still about being set free from one context and into another, but then you're free then to lean into the covenant that you have made with God, to not oppress the stranger, to be welcoming, to let everyone be a part of this community that that loves and worships the true and living God. So
So yeah, there's something really powerful happening here, and I don't want us to sort of gloss over it. We're going to talk a whole lot about salvation on Palm Sunday. That's the theme of the service, so I'm very excited about that, and you've planted a lovely seed for that. But I think what's also interesting is when we talk about being called out, I want to connect that thought with your earlier thought about a cosmic understanding of community, right? Because for some people have mistaken the calling out as a selective process rather than what we might call an elective, right? This is, God's just come on everybody, and those of us that take up this, answer this call, our task is not for us to get our own country club started, and to call it, we're saved, and the only way we know we're saved is to proof text that against how everybody else is not saved, right? Or God loves us against, God sent everybody else to, into perdition or whatever. And so I think it's really important to understand what this calling is for. This calling is to make the community bigger. Mm-hmm. That's the job, It is not, and not to convert people to be like you and to create a homogenous situation, but to embrace all of it. Mm-hmm. And I think that's where Jesus is calling. I mean, that's where we hear him say things like, God so loved what? The world, not God so loved you all, and it's, I've come to give them all life and that abundantly. These words keep coming out and they keep getting bigger. Mm-hmm. And so in many ways, where maybe the original Passover narrative is designed as an identifying narrative for that group of people, I think maybe when Jesus takes the Passover and sort of re-sanctifies it,
he busts the paradigm wide open.
There you go. Yes. Yes. Mm-hmm. Shay, you're dying to say something. What?
I'm just thinking about this idea of community, right? And even Dr. Terrell talking about this salvation as this sort of spaciousness, right? I think about God setting the table for us, right? Let's draw the circle and draw it wider still. I think creating space for other people, and that word community, as we noted, that prefix COM means with or together. And so this idea that, that we're becoming with, right? That we're becoming with one another. And I think Jesus models that. And I think, the one thing that I keep thinking about is, Dr. Terrell, the first week, I think you said, when love is truly real, it finds a way to give itself away to the other. And I'm thinking about Jesus pouring the cup out, and I'm thinking about who's sitting around the table with him. And of course, party of 12, or no, let's make it bigger, right? Let's invite people. And that is so characteristic of Jesus, saying, hey, Zacchaeus, I'm gonna come sup at your house, or, he was always eating. And I think there's something beautiful about this idea. And a covenant, is this idea, I think, where we're just coming to terms with how we can relate to one another, right? We're making commitments to one another for how we can all flourish. We can commit to the work of love and of justice in the world. And, it's at the table where all of that sort of comes together for me. So I'm just listening to what y'all are saying. I got a lot of images floating around my head.
Yeah. Let's talk about that pouring out. That's a thing that I'm always fascinated with. And even this morning, as Shane and I were on the phone, just kind of checking in with each other after we've been in meetings every night this week, Dr. Terrell. So there's been a morning check-in every morning. But in the middle of it all, we were talking about our conversation we were about to have today, and we were talking about the Philippians hymn, right? Where, Christ being made in the likeness of man, took on himself the form of a servant, humbled himself, emptied himself, is really what the verse is there. The kenosis, emptied himself. And I really believe, for me, every time that I do communion, and there's that moment when, as the, doing the institution, where I pour the wine into the cup, there's something in me that is just so impossibly moved, because what's very interesting is that there is this idea. What does that mean to you, that being poured out? Because that really does set up all of the coming events, right? This idea that his life is being poured out. So let's talk about that for a minute.
Can I just say, I just love that text in Philippians, because it's a hymn. It's a hymn in the life of the early church, and I can just see in my mind's eye the people singing this in the catacombs. Yes. I can just, as they're expressing their absolute awe and love for Jesus through this hymn, and expressing something about his worthiness, yes, to be praised, something about his worthiness. consider Jesus, who, though he was in the form of God, did not count equality a thing to be grasped, but he emptied himself. He poured himself out. He made himself of no reputation. And that's hard. It's hard, I think, for postmoderns to think about pouring oneself out and and figuring out a way to still be whole, to still be self-loving, all of those things that we know are healthy. To pour oneself out. I think to be able to do that, you have to be healthy in the first place. I don't mean the kind of self-sacrifice that doesn't consider oneself. I think it's to know yourself as an empowered witness, to know yourself as God's agent, and to trust God so implicitly that in the pouring yourself out, you know that you'll be poured back into. You know that you don't have a problem giving away your power, because power is not something that you need to grasp. Because power replenishes itself. Because power is a moving target anyhow. That's the story of the woman with the issue of blood and the child who is sick at Jairus's house. That whole story demonstrates the whole flow of power as a moving target. It's a moving target, and that power is not something that you need to worry about. Because even though Jesus had the power tapped out of him by the woman with the issue of blood, by the time he gets to Jairus's house, he has enough power to raise the little girl from the dead, because he didn't worry about power. And so we worry about power, and that's why we find it difficult to pour ourselves out, to pour ourselves into the work of social justice, for example, or to pour ourselves into the work of ministry, to whatever ministries we are called. We find it difficult because we worry, I think, needlessly, according to Isaiah, as well as the writer to Philippians, Paul, when he says, "They that wait upon the Lord renew their strength. They mount up on wings like eagles. They run and not be weary. They'll walk and never faint." Because we don't have to worry about power. Mm-hmm. And we worry so much needlessly. We worry when we're sick that we're going to die or we're going to remain debilitated. But if you know God, well, I'm not saying you won't worry, but you find a way to have peace in the midst of those things. You find a way to have peace in the midst of trials and equanimity in the midst of those trials, because on some level you know that you'll get it back. You'll be replenished. You'll be surprised with joy. Surprised by joy. You'll be surprised by the people who take care of you, who come to take care of you when you're sick. You'll be surprised by the fact that you are valued, even if you don't value yourself in the moment. But somehow you learn this as you grow in life, as you get older, and you realize, I don't have to worry about power. I don't have to worry. It's not a zero-sum game for God. It's not a zero-sum game. More power for me doesn't mean less power for you. More power for you doesn't mean less power for me. More power to you. That's more power to you. More power to you. Can we make that a benediction? More power to you. More,
Yeah.
more power to you as we bless people. More power to you. More joy to you. More peace to you. More to you. Not less because I don't have it in this particular moment. But Jesus teaches us profoundly by his absolute trust in God
Mm-hmm.
to be able to pour yourself out for humanity,
Mm-hmm.
to be able to pour yourself out for your uh, ministry, not in terms of the hermeneutics of sacrifice,
Mm-hmm.
but because you know you are bearing sacramental witness to a God who is, and a God uh, who without fail empowers, without fail.
For some reason, the text, every Lent, there's always a text or two that messes with me. There's always a text that just messes with me, and I never know what it's going to be or where it's going to come from. And this Lent, for some reason, I have been messed with these three moments when Jesus keeps saying, "Okay, we're going to Jerusalem. Then I'm going to meet up with the trouble. I'm going to meet into some trouble. They're going to kill me, but I'm going to rise on the third day."
Mm-hmm.
And that, to me, what you're saying speaks to that understanding of power, that they may think that they may nail me to a tree and take the very life out of my body, and that's the best they can do, or the worst they can do, but they don't understand that I've got this power that's going to replenish this power is greater than even life and death. And I think that is true. I think that in our eagerness to debunk some of the superstitions that have been built up in a literal reading of scripture, sometimes we lose the very truths that are at the heart of it.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
This goes back to what you were saying last week. We are children of a God. And if that is true, that power, yeah.
That power belongs to us.
Yes.
Yes. And we have the power to do mighty things, good things, uh, blessed things, things that create community, and but we also have the power to destroy.
Mm-hmm.
And we have to decide, to whom are we giving ourselves? To what are we giving ourselves? And sometimes we inadvertently give ourselves to unworthiness. So we have to live with consciousness in order to wield our power carefully
Yes.
and responsibly.
Yes.
And knowing uh, that God is in us, and that God is doing can do mighty things through us.
That's really a powerful thought, because we do pour ourselves out.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
We pour ourselves out after something. If it's after materialism, if it's after success,
relationships,
religion, we'll
religion,
pour yes.
pour ourselves out. But sometimes we even do that unworthily.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, for years, I I sat under unsound teaching, and my best friend, told me, God is going to judge you for sitting under mess. And I heard her, but it took me a long time to act on what she was saying. God is going to judge you for sitting. And when God judges righteously. And God has a solution for you when God judges. God's judgment isn't like ours. We just have condemnation.
Yeah.
But
Amen. Yeah.
God has a solution for you when God judges you.
Yeah.
And certainly she didn't mean that as the kind of judgmentalism that we are often guilty of. She meant that as, within yourself, the God within you already knows that you shouldn't be sitting here listening to this homophobic, sexist, ranting, uh, misogynoir, all of this stuff that you listen to, and you try to counteract with your messages of positivity and love and universal love and such, but you're damaging your own spirit. So
It's true. It's true.
but we have an obligation to know what we're listening to,
Mm-hmm.
and to know the relationship of what we're listening to the message of Christ.
That's right.
Mhm.
That's right. I think that one of Gather's great traits is that it is a place of reclamation. It is the I couldn't do that anymore, so I needed to come over here. And it's very interesting. We've got folks from, if I can't even begin to count the strains of faith that have come to Gather, you
Mhm.
know, and it's always the sort of the same story. I was sitting there and all of a sudden I just looked up one day and said, this, I can't do this, you know. But I think that's also because those communities are trying to put very hard boundaries around the table, around the faith line, around the behaviors, around all of those things, and missing
Missing the ball. It happened for me one Easter morning. I got up and got ready for church, and I drove, and I found myself at the Baha'i temple.
huh. Uh-huh.
And I didn't even know what was happening.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm, mm-hmm,
But I figured out later that I was getting free.
mm-hmm.
I was getting free, and we have to get free from the kinds of nonsense that have nothing to do with the life and message of Jesus.
And we make so many excuses. And there's this tendency, because a lot of this is associated with our parents and grandparents and family and people we love dearly. And so I was in a, yeah,
I haven't stopped loving the people that I love.
no,
I
no,
can't.
no,
I can't do
it's
that.
not possible.
That's
But
not possible.
but it's also, it creates a weird kind of self-loathing after a while, doesn't it? Because here I am, I know where I'm sitting. This isn't healthy. Why am I still, why am I still my situation? I was in church on a Sunday morning and I had already figured out I worked out all the texts and done all that stuff. So anytime the preachers got up and went off on one of these anti-gay rants, it was like, all right, boo boo, well, you haven't done your homework like I've done the homework. So that, just go ahead. It's not going to affect me. And I was protected. And I was there one Sunday in a church that was booming. And I had worked with their prayer ministry and fundraised for them and got their building fund started and everything. Sitting there, and the preacher just went off on one of those rants. I can't even use the language that this preacher used.
Mm-hmm.
And I looked up in the choir stand and I knew 10 people out of the 70 people who were in the choir, and I could see how crushed they were.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I could see how crushed they were. They loved this man. They loved this church. They loved the expression of faith that was in this church. And here it was like somebody had just driven a tractor over their souls.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And that was when coming out the door, time to meet the preacher at the front door. And I just said, I can't come back. I'm sorry. I can survive your stuff,
Mm-hmm.
but I can't be party, and I certainly can't support the crushing of other people.
You deserve so much more than just surviving.
That's
what
exactly
people
right.
don't realize. You deserve to flourish and to
Right.
thrive and to be you and all your belovedness.
That's exactly right. That's exactly right.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's what happens when Jesus pours himself out. It's all of Jesus, right? It's all of Jesus. And I know, and there's this whole thought, we're wrapping up, but there's this whole, I every now and then I'll get online and just start looking to see what the conversations are around these things. I love the idea of, the Greek word kenosis, of being emptied out, of being poured out. I love this idea of kenosis. I pray for that, but every now and then I just get online and I look to see, and there's all these people that get into these arguments about Jesus could not have emptied himself because then his divinity would have gone away. And I just think, well, part of me just wants to put it like in the comment section, I always resist, but it's like, you morons, but I don't even, It is the most godlike gesture of a God who continued to the point, if we tell the story that God takes on human flesh in the first place, the idea that Jesus pours himself out. And the reason I think why he reaches for the cup is that his understanding of even what's to come is this sense of pouring out. And he says this is blood, but life is in the blood. That's what scripture says. The life is in the blood. So this is my life that's being poured out. It's amazing.
And when we give ourselves to, we pour out our time.
Mm-hmm.
And time is life for us.
Yes. Yes.
You know, we may never be called to literally give our physical life for the gospel.
Mm-hmm.
But you know, if we're living witnesses, we'll witness unto the death, unto the point of death.
That's right.
We'll do that. But we're pouring out our time. Our time is our life.
Amen.
And how you spend your time is important to God. Where you spend your time, with whom you spend your time is important to God. And you definitely should not do that in such a way that you undermine your own gift of life.
Yeah. Yeah, that's not sacrifice. That's just
and the giftedness of your particularity.
Mm-hmm.
You know, the giftedness of being LGBTQ, the giftedness of being wrapped in black flesh, the giftedness of being uh, a, a musician who is got a call on your life.
Mm-hmm.
You know, the giftedness, all the gifts that we have, um, should we should want to give in the service of making people whole and being at one with ourselves and with God. So
Yeah. Oh, part of me just now wants to just go sit with this for a while, just sit still with it for a while. I think it's a beautiful idea. And I think that those lessons kind of get obscured in the high drama of Thursday's events, right? It's like, okay, here come Judas, here come the temple guards. Somebody gonna cut off somebody's ear, you know? Somebody's gonna lose their clothes. Somebody's gonna run off this way. Jesus gonna get carried over here. Roosters are gonna start crying. All this stuff, and we lose this, what we've been talking
we
about.
were together in Israel.
Yeah.
Yes, yeah. Shay and I, weren't you there too, Tim? At the
I was
same
not. I had to work, so I had to cancel.
time?
Yeah.
We were, but when we were in the Garden of Gethsemane, it was very easy to see the events unfolding there in the Garden of Gethsemane.
Say
And
more.
it was my imagination was in overdrive when we got to that site. And I could see the praying.
Mm-hmm.
I could see the sleeping disciples. I could just see the arrest taking place. And I could see even John's version of it where everybody falls backwards because of the glory that was on Jesus. Because, you know, I understand something about being so radiant with the power of God on you that people see your charisma. And I think yeah, and I could just see it. I could just see it all happening. I could feel Jesus's angst, and I could feel his resignation.
Mm-hmm.
And his not his resignation but his surrender
Mm-hmm.
to the the calling to live all the way up unto the point of death. uh, I could feel his surrender, and when I got to well, I guess I'll save the conversation about Golgotha for later. But oh my gosh, my imagination just went into overdrive, and I could, even though we were there during the daytime, it was at night in my mind, and I I I loved Jesus the more for his ability to to tell the truth about what he was feeling, and eventually to come to surrender, and eventually to pour himself out, body, soul, blood,
Mhm.
all of it, heart, mind, all of it. He gave it all.
Mhm.
And that's a powerful example for us,
Yes.
that we need to see
Hmm.
if that's our lot, and if that's our call, if we really want to be self-realized.
Hmm.
If we really want to be self-realized, we have to have a self to pour out. We
Okay.
have to have a
There
self
you go.
to pour out.
And I love, you mentioned John. I just love the passion aspect of it too. It says, for those who were his own, it says he loved them. He loved them to the end.
The end.
To the end.
I don't know why that's the phrase that this holy sort of, we're in Lent right now, but as I look ahead to Holy Week and think about Maundy Thursday and Good Friday, that just, man, that's really been hitting me. And he loved them to the end. Love drove him to that end.
Mhm. And the love crafted this story.
Hmm.
The love for him crafted his story and kept on telling it.
Hmm.
And his love just continues to reach through the centuries and the distance, all of that, to lift me up higher and higher, to to a to an assurance,
Hmm.
to an assurance that I'll never be alone in this life. I
Hmm.
mean, and in fact, the spirit of the Lord spoke to me and said, "I will never let you go from my hand.
Right. That's right.
I will never let you go from my hand. Never let you go
Yeah.
from my." So everything that has happened to me, including the illnesses that I've experienced, including the convergence of religions in my spirituality, through all of that, and all of that is genuinely experienced, I have never felt abandoned by Jesus.
Hmm.
I love him. I
No,
love him. I love him.
I know.
Yeah. I love
Because
him.
I'm so there's the song in my head. We did it a couple months ago, I think. It gathered that I love you, Jesus. I worship and adore you. Just want to tell you, I love you more than anything. That song messes with me.
Yeah, me
I
too.
probably 5 days a week. It's
Yeah.
somewhere along the way, I find myself singing that.
Hmm.
And until you have done that, until you have got to that place where, and I love the point that you keep making for us, uh, Reverend Dr. Terrell, which is that this story is shaped by people out of their love for him.
Yes.
It wasn't like there was a new product that was put on the shelf, and instead of choosing this, I'm going to choose that. This came from this profound love that was transferred from generation to generation, and it succeeded a story. It became a very felt reality, a very felt reality. I know this in my own life. I think of my grandfather, who I don't know if anybody, I don't know who loved, there's nobody I knew who loved Jesus more than my grandfather. But there are times whenever I actually can feel him
Oh,
in the love that comes through, that just wells up inside me. I know nobody loves Jesus more than my mama. Sometimes to my own chagrin, because it makes my life hard. Sometimes she gets so caught up in her love for Jesus. But it doesn't matter, because it's just one of those things that when you get there, I can't explain it, but once you get to that place where you just love Jesus,
when you love Jesus, you can't stop.
you can't stop. It's just,
Can't,
I just love Jesus,
you just can't stop.
and
No
and
matter
you
what,
can,
you just can't
and
stop.
yeah, and as the old saints used to say, just talk about me as much as you please. It's just, that's okay.
When you talk, I'm gonna bend my knee.
I'm gonna stay on my knees. That's right. Because that's not gonna stop me. That's just not gonna stop me from this.
Yeah.
And I think that's why we're still telling this story 2,000 years
Telling
later.
the story
We're
still.
telling the story because people loved Jesus.
Mhm. I
Mhm.
love to tell the story.
Oh my God, yes. Will be my theme.
Yes, 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 yes.
Don't talk hymns with me now.
Oh no! Oh, oh yes.
Mm-hmm.
The theology of the hymns, some of them are a little problematic, but some of them are just so profoundly beautiful.
They are, and I think so. Even the ones that are problematic are written from a place of profound love.
Yes,
You know?
even
Yeah.
that, even that. Yeah, yeah.
Mm-hmm. Oh my goodness. Well, I don't know where to go from here except to say this has been wonderful.
It's
And
always wonderful talking with you all.
yes,
Keeps getting gooder and gooder, as
gooder
my
and
grandma
gooder.
would say.
Yeah, it's right. Gooder and gooder.
I think it's a beautiful thing. I've been invited to preach the seventh last word for a church.
Oh,
Mhm.
nice.
I've also been invited to preach on Easter Sunday for a church.
Oh,
Oh,
I'm
are these are virtual services or in-person services?
One is in person. Well,
Okay.
Easter Sunday is in person.
Okay.
Other service is virtual, so I can.
Well, you'll have to make sure that we know this so we can let the gather folks know.
Okay.
Yeah,
we'll be praying.
yes,
for that.
absolutely.
Yes,
Yeah.
thank you. Yeah, I think the Easter service will be live streamed, so
Mm-hmm. Good.
I'll be there at
Yeah,
the church in person.
that's wonderful.
I was supposed to preach for them in September, but I
Mm-hmm.
got sick.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
They
Mm-hmm.
changed it to this Easter Sunday service, and I feel so honored. I
Mm-hmm.
feel, even though I'm a Christian preacher, I've been moving in the direction of interreligious,
Mhm.
uh, identity and thought
Mhm.
and preaching even and speaking. But I feel so honored to tell the story.
Mhm.
I love that Jesus.
I'm
I,
telling you what.
I
I'm
don't
telling you.
want anybody to be confused about that.
No, I love it. I'm very clear about this. I'm very clear.
I'm very clear.
Yes.
Yeah,
Amen.
Jesus is not somebody whose hand you want to let go. He's not somebody you want to not love,
That's
Mm.
right.
or whose love you don't want to realize the
No,
fullness thereof.
that's exactly right.
Mm.
It's a wonderful thing, and that's exactly it. It's there for the taking. It's just, but you just got to get past your own self to get to it. That's the thing. You just got to get past your own self to get to it.
I often wonder about people. It's like, why wouldn't anyone not love Jesus? Why
Mm-hmm.
would anyone not love Jesus?
Mm.
But it's the same thing is true. If you know him, you gotta love him.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but I
You
think there
ever
is.
love
I,
him. But we just bound in these doctrinal boxes.
Mhm. Identity theft.
Hmm
yeah. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I feel the same way about the Buddha. Why wouldn't you love the Buddha? Why
Mm.
wouldn't Jesus love the Buddha?
Right.
Mm.
Or
Why,
the Buddha loved Jesus. They would all.
why,
Yes, indeed. Yeah.
why wouldn't they? Why wouldn't they love each other?
Yeah. Exactly right.
Oh my, okay. That was
I was able to way back, as I like to say, when Jesus was in third grade. Way back. Um, I I was in London as was it my sophomore year in college? I was there, and they had staged in the West End. They had staged Jesus Christ Superstar, and they had pulled a lot of the people that had sung on the original album. So Von Elliman was there singing Mary Magdalene, and when she got to that "I Don't Know How to Love Him" song, I was sitting there. I was sitting there. This 19-year-old kid sobbing, and I don't think I recovered for the rest of the year. I just don't think I've recovered. It was to me one of the most powerful moments because it was, you know, uh, I don't know how to do this, and it was just like, oh, you just got to open your heart, you know,
Right.
come into my heart, Lord Jesus. That's all it is.
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
yeah.